Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to go over the 2 diets that I recommend most for the people that I work with. And no matter what your goal is, one of these options should be able to fit into your lifestyle. So in today's culture, we kind of live in this black and white society where we want just straight, this is good, this is bad. And really, when you're talking about your biology, it doesn't really work that way. Right now, we see 2 polar ends of the spectrum. We see people on this side that say the quality of your food doesn't matter, it just matters on how much you eat and the macronutrient content. And on the other side over here, we see people, it doesn't matter how much you eat, it just matters what is the quality of the food. When really, we should probably meet in the middle and eat the proper amount and proper quality food. But today, I'm going to give you 2 options, one of which is going to focus more on the quantity of food, one of which is going to focus on the quality of food. Because I'm a big believer that there's not one diet that works for every single person. One, because of your biology, your physiology is not the same as everybody else. But 2, your psyche is not the same as everybody else. You may like certain things, you may have different addictions to certain things, and really there's not one diet that fits everybody's lifestyle either. So today we're going to have 2 options, one of which that focuses on you being consistent, and the other which focuses on you being disciplined. So let's start with that side first. So this is going to be the quality of food side. So how this diet works is I give you 5 rules that you need to follow. And if you can follow those 5 rules, you will probably be successful. Now, I'm not going to ask you to follow all 5 rules right away, but we're going to add 1 each week. So normally what we do is if you start from 0 and you just try and skyrocket to 100%, it's not going to work for very long. So what we do is you pick 1 rule, you follow that for a week, make it a habit, maybe even 2 weeks to make it a real habit, and then you can add in another rule. So what are the rules? Rule number 1 is you can only eat whole foods. I do not mean whole foods the market, the supermarket. I mean whole foods meaning you cannot eat anything processed. So to make it simple is if you don't know what animal or plant it directly came from, you probably shouldn't eat it. So bread, let's look at that. Would that be a whole food? You may know what plant it came from, but it did not directly come from there, right? It had to be processed along the way, so that is not a whole food. What we're essentially looking at here is going to be, meats, vegetables, fruits, these sort of things that you know exactly where they came from. That would be considered a whole food. Right there, if you can follow that rule, you would be in great shape. Okay, next rule that we look at is you need to have at least 2 macronutrients per meal. So what are our macronutrients? There's actually 4, but we're not going to consider alcohol a macronutrient today. We're going to look at protein, carbohydrates, and fat. So you need to have 2 per meal. So what are those things? Protein is going to be like our meats. It's going to be things like eggs. So there are other proteins that fall into that category too. Some plant-based proteins and that sort of thing. Next up, we're going to look at fats. Fats are going to be your oils, butter. It's going to be things, even avocados of fat, cheese, nut butters. Those are going to be our fats. And the last thing we look at is going to be carbohydrates. These are your starches, right? So it's things like bread, even though you can't have it. Fruit would even fall into the carbohydrate category because it has a lot of sugar. But mostly, if you think about it, it's your starches. Okay, so you need to have at least 2 of these per meal. This is important because when we look at the insulin effect or the blood sugar effect that a lot of carbohydrates have on you, it can be slowed down if you combine it with a protein or a fat. So an example of this would be like if you're going to have a snack of an apple. Now an apple is pretty much just sugar. It has some fiber in there, but it is just carbohydrates. Now when you eat that, it's going to skyrocket your blood sugar. But if you combine that with a fat such as peanut butter, it's going to slow that down. It's going to be a lot better option for you. So if you're going to have a snack, it needs to be apples and peanut butter. It needs to be grapes and cheese. We need to combine macronutrients. Essentially, no meal should be just carbohydrates. We're not going to really find a lot of meals that are just protein or just fat. If you do, I'm not really as concerned with those. We just don't want to see as many meals be just carbohydrates. So rule number 1, only whole foods. Rule number 2, at least 2 macronutrients per meal. Okay. Rule number 3 we have is at least 2 servings of vegetables per meal. Now, what is a serving? Think about it as the palm of your hand. The diameter here, the diameter here and the circumference here, and then also the thickness of your hand as well. That would be a serving. So every meal you have needs to have at least 2 servings of vegetables. I know, a lot of times we think of vegetables at breakfast is a little weird. And maybe I'll give you a little bit of leeway on breakfast, but there is no breakfast police that is going to get upset with you if you have broccoli for breakfast. But we want to aim as much as we can to get at least 2 servings of vegetables per meal, hopefully getting at least 6 per day. Next rule here is only 1 serving or less of carbohydrates per meal. So those starches that we talked about before, we cannot load our entire half of our plate up with some sort of starch, whether it be rice, whether it be potatoes. Even those are whole foods, they still are very heavy in carbohydrates, and we might want to avoid those. There's another video where we talked about why carbohydrates may not be the best food for you at the moment. Just to make this very clear too, I'm making this video for the general population. If you are an endurance athlete or looking for athletic performance, this video might not be for you. But if you're looking to lose weight or just like tone up or maybe even build muscle tissue, this is for you. So to get back on track, those carbohydrates, we want to reduce those down to 1 serving or less per meal. So once again, you know the size of your servings here. So let's recap. Rule number 1, only whole foods. Rule number 2, you can at least 2 macronutrients per meal. Rule number 3, at least 2 servings of vegetables per meal. Rule number 4, 1 or less servings of carbohydrates per meal. Now, finally, we get to our last rule. And my rule here is 1 or less supplemented meals per day. So a lot of times when I'm asking you to, you have to eat whole foods, you're not allowed to, I'm asking you to eat pretty much unprocessed cooked meals, or home cooked meals. You can get these out there, but most of the time you're probably gonna have to cook at home. We're gonna not be able to do that 24/7. So you might have to supplement a meal in with a protein bar, a shake, something like that, which is fine, but it can only happen once per day. We still wanna go for those whole foods. So when you're in a pinch, grabbing a protein bar, we like protein bars like Quest bars, One bars. Those aren't bad. Even the RX bars, they're completely all natural whole foods. We really like these things, but we only want to see this happen only once per day. Okay, so you have 5 rules. If you feel like you can't follow those, I'm going to give you another options. But this would be my number 1 choice for most of you. Now, this is what I follow. I don't like to track my food, which is going to be our second option. And so this really works well for me. I try and only eat whole foods. I pretty much only eat whole foods, and I keep those other rules in check. Okay, if that seems overwhelming to you, remember that you only have to do 1 a week until you make it a habit. But if it still seems overwhelming to you, let's go with another option. This option is going to require less discipline, but it's going to require a lot more consistency. So what we're going for over here is you're going to have to track all of your food, and it's going to have to fit into your given allowance per day. So essentially what we're going to do is you're going to get a certain macronutrient count per day, and you're going to log your food, and it has to fit into this. So the app that I suggest everybody download is MyFitnessPal. It's very, very easy to use. There's other ones like My Macros Pro, or there's even the MyPlate app. I've found that MyFitnessPal has the biggest database, and it's the easiest to use. Now, how do you know how many calories to eat? So this is going to be actually a little bit harder to calculate. Now, there are calculators online that you can go use. I don't find them very accurate. There are algorithms that you can find in nutrition books. Once again, I don't find them very accurate. There's just too many factors that go into what's called your basal metabolic rate. How many calories do you burn on a daily basis? There's too many things that go into that. What's your activity level? What's your genetic makeup, right? What have you done to your metabolism over the past 10, 20, 30 years, right? So we need to look into all these different factors. The really only true way to test how many calories you burn on a daily basis, or how many calories you need to be eating, is by logging your food, tracking it to the dot, and then seeing what happens to your weight. So what I always suggest people, you're not gonna be able to start today. You're actually gonna start a week from now. But for the next week, what you're gonna do is you're gonna log every single thing that goes into your mouth into MyFitnessPal. So whether it's a snack, whether it's a full meal, whether it's a piece of gum, you will log every single thing into MyFitnessPal. I do not want you to change the way you are eating whatsoever. But after a week, we're gonna weigh in every single day. You're gonna track your food every single day. And then you're gonna say, okay, here's how many calories I typically eat, or here's how many calories I did eat for this past week. And this is what happened to my weight. If your weight stayed the same, that calorie amount is probably how many calories your body burns with your basal metabolic rate and your lifestyle, okay? Now, depending on your goal, we now need to adjust. If you want to lose weight, what I would suggest is knock off 500 calories from this every single day. So if you were eating 2,500 calories, guess what? Now you're eating 2,000 calories. And you've probably heard this in the past. If you have any sort of knowledge of nutrition, there are 3,500 calories in a 1 pound of body fat, which makes up 500 times 7. If you do that for a week, that's 1 pound of body fat lost per week, if that's your goal. If you are looking to gain muscle tissue, what I would suggest to you is adding in anywhere between 300 to 400 calories a day, and that'll get you there, because when we look at a pound of protein, it's around 2,400 calories. So we don't want to go too overboard. We need to actually be in a little bit of excess from that. So you found your basal metabolic rate. You found how many calories that you need to be eating on a daily basis. You want to lose weight, drop down 500. You want to gain weight, increase it by 300 to 400 a day. Now, it gets a little bit more complicated than that. That sounds pretty simple. I mean, it may be complicated, just a lot of information at once, but it really won't be too hard. Now we need to look into your macronutrient makeup. Now, what that means is, we talked about this earlier, proteins, carbohydrates, and fat. One thing that's nice about MyFitnessPal is it will automatically log all these information for you. And when you log into your app and there's a little pie graph you can click on, it'll tell you the percentages of each that you're eating. Now, if you're eating the typical American diet, I can almost guarantee you're going to be eating an overwhelming amount of carbohydrates. We're going to look to decrease this a little bit. So a very easy place that most people can get to is a 30-30-40, which means 30% of your calories should be coming from protein, 30% of your calories should be coming from fat, and then 40% of your calories should be coming from carbohydrates. I don't think that this is the most optimal way to diet, but it's the first goal we want to get to. So once again, you can eat whatever you want as long as it fits into these categories. So you found out you have a 2,500 calorie a day balance. Now you're going to go ahead and plug that in there and then try and get that pie chart to fit that 30, 30, 40. If you want to get specific numbers, the math becomes a little bit more complicated. We have to realize that there's different calorie amounts in different macronutrients between proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Proteins and carbohydrates have around 4 calories per gram. Fats have around 9 calories per gram. Alcohol has around 7 calories per gram. So it all differs, so it does take a little bit of math to figure this out. But there are calculators online that you can use to figure this out as well. So let's wrap this all up. You have 2 different options that you can go with. 1, the discipline option. You need to follow my 5 rules that I gave you, adding in 1 rule a week until you get perfect. The other side is going to be the consistency side, where you're going to track all of your food. Every single time you take a bite of food, it goes into your app. And then you need to stay within your calorie goal and within your macronutrient goal, right? So you can test out both, see what works best for your lifestyle. If you're a person that has a hectic lifestyle, you're crazy busy, you're all over the place all the time, I would suggest the discipline side. If you have a little bit more time on your hands, but you find yourself craving junk food and you just can't seem to stay away from the foods you shouldn't be eating, I would probably sit more on the consistency side. So hopefully this helps you pick a lifestyle change that is right for you. And then if you have any other questions or need any more help, you can always reach out to us at endomath.com, leave comments in the section below, or you can always reach us on our website. Thanks.